So I was kind of cleaning out my drawer a little bit and actually found these things called envelopes. You remember them? It's like, I can't remember the last time I looked at this box. I mean, was there ever a reason to send something like in an envelope mail there? I mean, it's all email stuff right now. So I don't know. I'm just asking you if you need any. I mean, I got these and it's going to last like a lifetime because like nobody sends it out. Welcome to Section 420, Talkin Yankees. Well, Devin Williams will not be coming back to the Yankees, leaving the New York Yankees to go to the New York Mets. Kind of a bizarre signing by the Mets, signing the Yankee kind of beleaguered reliever who had kind of up and down season to a 3-year deal. Kind of, probably makes everyone's head scratch, made my head scratch, but we'll kind of go through the whole deal background. I'll give my analysis of it. And of course, mentioned in the last episode, Sonny Gray joining the Red Sox as they look to bolster their starting rotation. Well, another AL East foe, the Toronto Blue Jays, also bolstering their starting rotation. 7-year deal for Dylan Cease, which I think was a good move for them. But again, we'll kind of go through the background of the move. Should the Yankees been on him or not there? But a deal for 7 years, $210 million there. So I guess we'll look at those two pitchers deals, and then afterwards we're gonna do something a little interesting, a little bit fun here. Obviously, here we have the off season. We're gonna do little things, maybe off the field, on the field, and stuff. We got this thing called AI, artificial intelligence. What is it? Do you like it? Do you don't like it? Anyway, did a little research on the show itself, the Section 420 Talkin Yankees show, just to see what's out there on the internet saying about this. I guess you could also, you could basically you could manipulate and make up like a fan mail. Also, be great if you guys would send a fan mail. If you want to send a fan mail, send a ton of it in. But this is AI inspired fan mail. So these aren't real people, but so this is all based on AI. So the name, the location, don't blame me, blame AI. So we're interested in what questions AI would have for this show. Now, again, you should be having these questions, but AI is going to have these questions there. So I'm going to be answering AI questions there. So, have a little fun here on this episode. So we'll do a little business with the contracts and do a little bit messing around with the AI. But you got some work to do. If you haven't done it already, make sure you subscribe to the audio podcast version of Section 420 Talkin Yankees. Don't worry, you won't get sucked in by AI. Wherever you get your favorite podcast, and if you're watching on YouTube or if you're watching here on television, go to YouTube, search for Section 420 Talkin Yankees, subscribe there as well, be part of the intelligence. So a few episodes here on YouTube, we kind of discussed Devin Williams. Again, there was some rumors that the Yankees were having conversations with him, and again, the rumors were around a 3-year deal. So I took my stance. I did not want this guy back. Even though maybe he did correct himself, in September and was, really didn't have any blow-ups in the postseason like that. I mean, he was good in the postseason the times the Yankees put him in. But overall, you look at the body work, the 2025 season, if you're the Yankees, you cannot bring this guy back. Just the struggles early on. I just, listed a whole host of games, at least 7 or 8 games that either he blown leads, he lost for the Yankees. I mean, probably if you had anyone else but him, the Yankees are probably the AL East champions last season, versus what, just the damage he did, especially early on, especially the first game of the year. Man, the Yankees had a 4-0 lead in the 9th inning. He almost coughed it away. Yankees lucky to walk away with a 4-3 lead. So the guy was bad the whole season, even though he course corrected himself there. I just didn't think there was anything wow about him that you'd want to bring this guy back. Now, Luke Weaver, I'm open to bringing back just because, we see, obviously last year wasn't great for him, but we saw what he did in 2024, especially during that postseason run where it was just like Mariano Rivera-esque, where, I would maybe consider bringing him back. Did not want Devin Williams, but nevertheless, it's kind of shocked like everybody when it turns out the Mets signed Devin Williams to a 3-year deal. Now, the whole situation, the Mets, we know that Edwin Diaz is there, who's probably maybe one of the top closers in the game, opted out of his deal. Now, according to Mets sources, I don't have any Mets sources, but from what I read, the Mets are still interested in bringing Diaz back. So, just because they signed Devin Williams doesn't mean they're just out on Diaz. But he's probably kind of just a plan B. If it doesn't work out, at least you can put Devin Williams there, who does have closer experience. Again, before joining the Yankees, Devin Williams was probably considered one of the top 2 or 3 closers in the game there. But it just seems like that's more in the rearview mirror at this point, which is why I did not want him back. But nevertheless, this is kind of a weird deal. And just the fact that he struggled a lot last season and how he was able to command a 3-year deal is just kind of head-scratching. So, good job by his agent. So it's a 3-year deal for $51 million. Now, a lot of that $51 million is deferred for later on. I guess that's like the new thing to do now for contracts. So still for him, the season he had last year with the Yankees, which was not great at any imagination, forget 3 years, $51 million. I mean, again, kudos again for his agent for pulling that one off there. But if you're the Mets there and if you're the Met fans on there, I'm not sure really how enthused you're about this. I mean, obviously, maybe if you're a Met fan, you see at least what's going on in Yankee land, and you saw the struggles he had, you want to bring this guy in. I mean, the Met bullpen was bad as it was last season. Again, other than Diaz, their starting rotation was bad, was flat, as well as their bullpen. And now you bring in a guy who's has had a lot of problems, a lot of issues, and yet he's another year older as well. I just don't know how Met fans are excited about that. So really don't understand the move. Now you could look at the Met GM Dave Stearns. Now he was the former GM of the Brewers, so obviously he knows Devin Williams very well. He probably groomed him, had him all these years in that organization. So you got to understand maybe a sentimental feeling to want to bring him back there, but. Again, I just don't think this is really a good move for the Mets, and I'm the Yankees. I'm happy to send him out of here. I don't think the Yankees have lost out anything. And even if he turns himself around and he becomes a really good closer, again, fine, let him do that with the Mets over there at Citi Field. Again, if you're the Yankees, you could not bring this guy back for 3 years. I think that would have been ridiculous. So he ends up with the Mets. He's going to be 32 next season there. So he's getting a little bit older. Again, he's not a guy that throws 100 miles per hour. We know his whole deal. He throws low 90s there, and he's got the airbender, his off-speed pitch that drops it at 82, 83. So he got about a 12 to 13 mile per hour difference on his pitches there, and that's kind of how he gets his swings misses. But he wasn't getting that at the start of the season last year for the Yankees. Struggled mightily. He eventually found it, but he got to the point where he lost the closer job. He came back. He got the closer job for about a week. Then he lost it again, and he was again the first 75% of the season was a complete. Pretty much a train wreck there, even though he rectified himself there. If you're the Yankees, you could not bring this guy back. And if you're the Mets, I just don't see the appeal with this guy. Now, it could mean that maybe they just don't have faith that they're going to bring in Diaz, who's also 32 years old. And, I'm sure they don't want to sign a 32-year-old to a 4 or 5 year deal there. So, they maybe figure if they strike out on Diaz, then at least they have Devin Williams as a fallback. Okay there. But to sign him for 3 years, the way he struggled there, that's kind of a bold move. But you can understand Stearns, maybe just the fact that, he knows Williams for a long time there, maybe just that sentimental value there. Maybe that's had to do with it. I don't know. But clearly, since, again, Williams, 2024 wasn't great for him either because he missed a chunk of the season. He had to hurt back. Now, for the Yankees to trade to get him for Nestor Cortez, I still think that was a good move to make. And again, Nestor, his stock was down at that time. Again, they just give out that big grand slam to Freddie Freeman, where I think that ball's still traveling. Again, Cortez was never going to be as good as he was at his best with the Yankees. So it was a good move by Cashman. I think it was a good move to bring him in, combine it with Luke Weaver, and kind of have that power duo there as in the closer role. But both those guys struggle there. So sometimes things don't work out. But the idea was good. But then give this guy $51 million after all that, no, that would be a bad move. So, Bob very large, happy, whatever. Hope for the best for him in Queens there. But again, weird move for the Mets there, and I just have a feeling that he's going to be driving Met fans nuts. I just have a little inkling. Now, for a move that at least makes a little bit more sense is the signing of Dylan Cease by the Toronto Blue Jays. A 7-year deal worth $210 million, which I think is fair market value for him. Now, he's 29 years old. He's going to be 30 by the time the season starts there. So, a long-term deal for someone 29, 30 years old is not terrible for a pitcher there. So, the years and all that makes sense. Now, Dylan himself didn't have the greatest of seasons last year. Again, pitcher on the 500 record. ERA was kind of high at 4.55. Again, clearly not the pitcher of, maybe 2 seasons ago or a couple of seasons ago with the White Sox when it was a hot commodity there. But nevertheless, the strikeout and swing and miss stuff there, 168 innings. He had 215 strikeouts, so you're averaging about more than a strikeout per inning. And the walks at a moderate 71 there. So looks like his control is okay there, but did get a hit a lot again in those 168 innings. Gave up 152 hits. So a little less than a hit per inning there, which is not terrible, not great there. But again, didn't have the greatest of season, but nevertheless, you can look at the situation. It wasn't really with a great team in San Diego. Sometimes you're in a bad environment too. That could also rub off the wrong way. So I think it's a good move for Toronto. And obviously they need starting. They need starting pitching. See with the Yankees last season, whether it was against the Red Sox or against Toronto, on paper, the Yankees always had the advantage with the starting pitching, even without Garrett Cole. Now at least it shores up. Again, I mentioned before, the Red Sox adding Sonny Gray, and now the Blue Jays adding Dylan Cease, again, to a 7-year deal. So if you look at them, what they lost, obviously they're losing Scherzer to free agency. They lost Chris Bassett to free agency there. So they needed to make a move. Again, their starting rotation wasn't great. Obviously, you had Kevin Gausman, who pitched well against the Yankees. The Yankees couldn't touch the guy. Yasevich came up there out of the scene. But after that, they get a little bit thin there. So again, Dylan Cease there, again, it makes life not difficult for the Yankees because obviously Blue Jays are a foe, a rival. They knocked you out of the playoffs, and now they even got stronger by adding Dylan Cease to the starting rotation. So it's someone the Yankees are going to see a couple times per season. Now Toronto's got a lot more work to do. See if they're going to re-sign Bo Bichette or not. Mentioned the Yankees might be on him. I just don't see the case there. And you might figure, with the Yankees, should they have been in on Dylan Cease? If you go back to Hal Steinbrenner's comments last week, which we covered here on this show. It doesn't look like they want to add too much, payroll. I mean, he said he wants to at least be under 319. Obviously, they're still working out with Bellinger there, so I think they'll accomplish getting Bellinger. Again, it's got to kind of crunch the numbers in years and stuff like that. So that seems to go beyond Bellinger. It didn't seem like Howe was looking to add any big payroll after that. So I don't think they'd be in on deal cease. And again, and if we can bring talk about making a trade or something to bring Skubal in here as well, I just don't think that because you're going to give up so many chips to get him there, and you're not going to bring the guy in here that's for a 1-year deal. You're going to have to bring him in and give him a long-term contract, which again, I just don't see the Yankees adding that sort of major payroll there. So I don't think the Yankees were going to be in on deal cease. Nor then for that Yankee situation, I don't think they just needed him because I think right now they have a plethora of starting pitching. Toronto needed Dylan Cease, so that totally makes sense for them. Again, he's only 29; he'll be 30 soon. And if you want to at least look in terms of durability, he made 33 starts last season. The year before that, 32. The year before that, 32. The year before that, 33. So the guy makes the starts. He pretty much stays healthy. Again, his record's not always the greatest there, but I think that's a good. For Toronto, I think it's a really good move. And again, he only stuck with them about 7 seasons. Where by the time he's 36, 37, it's not like he's old. I mean, he's not really a super power pitcher there. So even if if his velocity goes down a little bit, I still think he could be effective. And if you're the Yankees now, this is someone you're going to deal with for the next 7 years. So this year's baseball's winter meetings will take place in Orlando during the second week of December. I mentioned before, the Yankees, probably not going to make any big moves other than kind of retain Cody Bellinger. Remember what Hal Steinbrenner said last week, they're not looking to add much to the $319 million payroll. If anything, it would look lower. They're telling me that they're not looking to bring on a ton of more contracts than they are right now. But probably the first one would be Bellinger. If that fails, maybe they go to Kyle Tucker there. But I just have a feeling that all guns and signs are pointing to Bellinger. Obviously, it would probably cost less than Tucker just because he's a couple of years older. But for the Yankees' purposes, I think Bellinger is just a better fit. Kind of went through the whole laundry list previously. Just, he's been here for a year under his belt. He kind of performed well here. He could handle it. How many guys come here and just kind of wither and can't hit a ball anymore or just struggle their first couple of months, a la Devin Williams last season? Not saying that Kyle Tucker would do that. I'm sure he's a professional at this point there, but still, you just never know there. But Bellinger gives the Yankees a lot of flexibility. He can play all outfield positions, can play first base if he need be. I just think overall, again, he's just a better fit for the Yankees, so I think they're going to try to aim to retain him. Other than that, they might be looking to bolster, adding some arms. I don't think they're going to bring over a starter. I know there's been some rumors that the Yankees may be in talks with the Marlins for Sandy Alcantara. I just don't think that's going to happen because, even if you bring him in for a year, still, are you going to give up the resources to bring this guy in for 1 year and then maybe have to give him a big contract afterwards? I just don't think the Yankees are looking to do that, nor give up the blue chips. Plus, look, the Yankees starting rotation, I know right now you're thin with Cole and Rendon not ready to start the season, but, these things you say work out, but okay, what happens when everybody comes back? I mean, you can only have so many starting pitchers there, so I don't think the Yankees are going to look to use the resources or blue chips to get him in here and then give him a contract after. So again, Cantata, I think, is out for the Yankees as well as Skubal. I just think it's all about getting Bellinger. And for these winter meetings, you usually don't see too many deals during the actual winter meetings. It's where the GMs are kind of commiserating with each other there. They're talking with agents like Scott Boras there. So kind of laying the groundwork there. And then usually a couple weeks after or maybe even early January is when we start seeing deals and trades being done. And if maybe when I look back with the Yankees when they got A-Rod, it was just before Christmas. If you remember the Daily News headline, it was kind of George Steinbrenner with A-Rod coming out of the box like a Christmas present there. And even go back to 2019 when both Manny Machado and Bryce Harper were the two hot free agents at the time there. Bryce Harper was almost going into January, who was still, a superstar player, still unsigned at that point there. So the winter meetings is kind of where you lay the framework, the groundwork, and have the conversation. Then after that, when you start seeing the moves done. So again, I don't expect Bellinger to be officially signed by the Yankees yet. And again, since this free agent market isn't really overall the greatest there, he might be one of the top prizes there. So that might just drag out a little bit longer. I think it's going to be in terms of how many years and money and that stuff. Yeah, they'll have to hash back and forth there. But if you're the Yankees, again, or a Yankee fan, you probably just maybe, more for anything, you're probably looking for trades to bolster up the bullpen. Again, that's right. Right now, what the Yankees need the fix. So you have to get rid of Williams there, but you got to kind of replace that Williams. And if you don't sign Luke Weaver, you do need some power arms in there. So if the Yankees make some moves and make some trades, I think it's all going to be towards the bullpen. So when you think of AI, you probably get negative thoughts. You probably think of like the Terminator and killing people and blowing people up. So that's the bad AI. We're going to do the good AI, and that's Chat-GPT. So basically what we did is, as I mentioned at the top there, looked up the name of the show, Section420 Talkin Yankees, and asked it like a what-if fan mail, basically a fan mailbag for Section420 Talkin Yankees. So this is AI, this is fake, it's not real people, but these are real questions, and AI, obviously they're still getting there a little bit in terms of technology, but some of these questions are pretty spot on there. So it is somewhat intelligent there. So I'm going to read the question for you, and then I'll answer it. So I will now be challenging AI in this one. So they're asking me questions there, and I'm pushing back there. So let's see if I could answer these AI questions there. So for our first one in there, and again, these questions are pretty nifty there. How do you see the balance between going all in now versus slowly rebuilding for sustained success with youth? Do you think the current roster win now moves are worth the risk, or would you more gradual rebuild and be more sustainable over the next 5 to 10 years? So more or less they're saying that should you go all in to win now, or should maybe not do that, maybe try to develop the young players and worry about developing young players that are going to be better for 5 or 6 seasons down the road. So the Yankees are a win now team. I mean, just the organization has been waiting since 2009. So yes, I think the Yankees should decide, and even if they have to overspend, overpay a little bit for someone to win right now. I mean, you got Judge in the prime of his career. He's wasting MVP seasons on nothing. You have Cole, 35 years old. I think he's still be effective. Again, he's no spring chicken. And you just have a lot of guys on the contract. You have Giancarlo Stanton at the last couple of seasons of his career, paying him a boatload of money to win now. You also have Max Fried. You have Carlos Rendon. So the Yankees got a lot of money locked up to players to win now. So let's say a deal comes along. I know someone like a Spencer Jones is a very great phenom. So I'm not saying you give him up right away, but if you get some mega trade like when they bought him Juan Soto a couple of seasons ago to bring him in here for that, to try maybe if he's that last piece to get him over the hump, I think you take that chance that again it could turn out flat. You could be like you were in 2024, get to the World Series and not win. But again, the Yankees will win now. So I think what they should be focused on is getting a championship this season and next season, not worrying about developing Ben Rice for season from now. I'd like to keep Ben Rice, but again, if you could make a deal to get him in here, I would do it. Now, are the Yankees actually going to do that? I don't know, because before it doesn't seem like Hal Steinbrenner is really motivated to spend too much money or add that much payroll. But no, the Yankee priority is to win now. Judge is your captain. He's in the prime of his career. You got to win now. So good first question by AI. Next one. What do you guys see as the biggest trade-offs with that bullpen strategy for 2026? Do you trust the front office's read on bullpen depth, or are there still missing pieces? Yes, there are missing pieces. I mean, right now you're looking at Bednar as your closer. Duvall, again, he was kind of a little up and down. The Yankees brought him in. I mean, he struggled a little bit. He righted himself there, so I think the jury's still out on him. But the Yankees obviously missing a piece with Devin Williams, which, he's going to the Mets now, and fine, they could have him. Luke Weaver, you don't know if you're bringing back there, but the Yankees do have to add pieces. I know you got Fernando Cruz. You like him. He took a huge step last season, and the Yankees tendered his contract, and I'm going to bring him back. Just got to kind of crunch the numbers there a little bit. But you still need some more arms. Cruz did get hurt a lot. Twice he went on the IL. So, you're going to need some more arms in it. And the Yankees kind of lost a lot of arms. Again, they let a lot of guys go, like Leiter, for example, who, again, you could go there. Guys like the Ian Hamiltons of the world are gone there. So the Yankees have to add bullpen depth. But I do trust, Brian Cashman. One of the things he's very good at, actually, is bringing in bullpen talent, usually on the cheap. Usually, takes guys like, for example, Tim Hill off the scrap heap and gets a good season at him, and they re-signed him as well as Yarbrough. Again, another guy who Cashman bought in at the last minute last season, and then re-signed him this season. So Brian Cashman, he has a very good eye to bringing in bullpen talent. Remember Clay Holmes a couple of seasons ago brings him in for the Pittsburgh Pirates. He's kind of a failed starter, and I know maybe his ending with the Yankees wasn't the greatest, but for about 2.5 seasons, he was the closer for the New York Yankees, and he was doing very well. Even someone like Luke Weaver, who's bouncing around a little bit between the Angels and Seattle, they bring Luke Weaver in, and 2024. You could say he was probably maybe one of the best, at least during the postseason, one of the best closers in the game. So I trust Cashman's eye on bullpen talent. The Yankees have to add the bullpen. I just mentioned previously what it means. That's probably what it's going to be. Adding arms to the bullpen. Probably he finds guys off the scrap heap, or he finds guys like off the Cincinnati Reds who are, something like a Fernando Cruz, who's, maybe the physical skills are there, but maybe they need to fine tune them when they bring them here, get them to throw more splitters and sliders into the dirt and get more swing and misses there. So, I trust Cashman's eye for that, and I think that's what the Yankees are going to be looking to do, adding to the bullpen. Again, I think Cashman does a good job. One of the few things he does well is adding bullpen arms there and getting a lot of times on the cheap. Next question. If you could bring back any former Yankee, past or recent, just to mentor the young guys in the clubhouse, who would you choose and why? Good question. You look at a lot of people might say the captain, Derek Jeter, stuff like that. But, I'm always a Paul O'Neill guy, and I think I would like to have maybe a Paul O'Neill type of player here who, he was never very vocal. Obviously we see him in the dugout when he was playing the smashing Kool-Aids and stuff like that. I guess off the field, maybe a chill guy. You see him with his drum set, him and Bernie jam a little bit there. But I would bring like a Paul O'Neill type, just a grit type of guy, type of player. He was kind of the ideal Yankees back then, where the Yankees never really had superstars. You just had a roster of 25 really good players, and that was kind of what the Yankees were. Whether it was Paul O'Neill, Bernie Williams, Jorge Posada. Guys, again, they weren't like superstars hitting 40 home runs and getting MVPs and stuff like that. It was just a really good, solid baseball team, contact hitting team, grinded out type of team, solid defense type of guy. And again, Paul O'Neill's that type of player. So if you could bring Paul O'Neill in here to be, that type of player to mentor some of the young guys, that would be the guy for me there. Again, you guys look at that run in the late 90s. A lot of other guys get the accolades such as Jeter, because obviously you got the core four and stuff like that. But Paul O'Neill is kind of that guy that centerpiece. Again, really the whole dynasty thing started with him and almost ended him. Of course, we all remember Game 5 at Yankee Stadium 2001, the crowd chanting Paul O'Neill, thinking that was going to be his last game. But of course, the Yankees had one of their miraculous comebacks in Game 5 there, at least brought the series back to Arizona. They would lose there. But Paul O'Neill was there for the start of it and there for the end of it. And I think you got to put a lot of the responsibility and a lot of the accolades of that whole thing should go to Paul O'Neill, but it doesn't, because he's kind of a bit of an undescript, quiet guy there. But I would bring in Paul O'Neill for that one. Next question. If the Yankees seriously pursue Cody Bellinger, what do you think is the maximum contract length they should go? Good question. Is Bellinger the missing piece, or would that money be smarter spent on pitching or more consistent right-handed bat? So, this AI had like a triple level question there. So that's pretty impressive there. So, God knows what they're going to come up in a couple of years from now. But very good question here. So, if the Yankees have what maximum contract length? All right. So, he's 30 years old there. I think 6, maybe 7 years max. I will not go more than that. And I don't think Bellinger's going to ask him more for that. I mean, obviously, he's not going to get a 10-year deal. That's ridiculous. I think if the Yankees could land around 6 for him, I think that should be the sticking point. If he wants 7 or 8 there, I don't think the Yankees should go that far. Again, relatively, look at him. He's relatively healthy. I know he had some injuries on his way out the door with the Dodgers there, but he seems like he's back health-wise. And again, last season with the Yankees, he wasn't like on the IL a ton. I know he had a little bit back issue there, and of course he had the food poisoning situation in Detroit. You remember the bad buffalo wings? You're ordering them to the hotel. I mean, why can't you just go out and get food? But nevertheless, but overall he was relatively healthy for Yankees. But in terms of would you say he's the missing piece? He's an important piece. I don't know if he was the missing piece there. I mean, I just think you just need more players to step up. So, if you remember this past, the past postseason, I mean, Judge was the only one that was hitting. You got really, Bellinger had a couple of good games against the Red Sox there, but really got nothing from Bellinger. You got nothing from Jazz. Paul Goldschmidt hit a couple of singles there, but he gave you nothing. Giancarlo Stanton gave you absolutely nothing. Ben Rice gave you that 2-run home run against Boston Red Sox. Otherwise than that, he didn't give you much. Orson Welles didn't give you much. So it wasn't just, so it's hard to say if Bellinger's the missing piece. I mean, he's an important piece, but let's just say the Yankees instead got Kyle Tucker, or maybe instead of spending money on Bellinger, just kind of let the outfield sit. Say, all right, well, we got Grisham in center. Left field, again, we'll give more time to Jason Dominguez. I mentioned before, last episode, he's playing winter ball. Maybe he fine-tunes his skill a little bit, and maybe just has that breakout season we're hoping for. I mean, the guy's only 22, 23 years old there, so I'm also give the guy a break. He's very young. This idea that, a guy comes up here, he's like 20 years old, and you want him to be a superstar already. I mean, back in the day, guys played a little bit in their minors, and maybe they didn't come up until 25, 26, and then they exploded in the season. So, I'm okay with it. Let's say if they don't sign Bellinger and just start the season with Jason Dominguez in left field, give him more playing time, all the playing time, and see if he has that breakout season where, you could save money. You don't have to spend like $100 or $160 or $200 million on someone like Bellinger there. So I don't think Bellinger's a missing piece. I think he's an important piece. Now, this is kind of specifically said, should the money be spent on pitching or more consistent right-handed bat? I was obviously, yes. I think the Yankees, as for the bullpen. So yes, I think they should put resources towards that bullpen. I mean, that's the way the game is now. Most starters don't really go more than 5 innings now. So if you have a superstar, rock star bullpen, I would put all my resources in that. We saw what the Dodgers have done a couple of seasons. Not really have it. Again, they have good starting pitchers. They don't really have a good starting rotation. But their strength is always from their bullpen, where they have one guy come out from the pen after another. Even with Toronto, Toronto's starting rotation overall last season wasn't great. Even in the postseason wasn't great. A lot of those starters were out by the 3rd or 4th inning, but Toronto's bullpen, for the most part, was very good. One guy after another coming out of the bullpen. So I think if the Yankees want to spend resources, let's say for some reason they don't sign Bellinger, I would say put that right to the bullpen, have a rock star bullpen the whole way. But in terms of right-handed bat, the Yankees could be a little bit too left-handed. So yeah, you could pick up a guy off a bench. I don't think they're going to retain Paul Goldschmidt. The guy's going to be 38 next season. He was okay for the Yankees. He got off to a great start to the season, but he kind of declined and had some problems with his knee a lot, like that. Let's say he was like hurt on the IL, but he basically his body wore down the second half there, so I wouldn't look to bring him back. someone like Rosario, maybe he's young, he's only like 30, 31 years old. Again, he was pretty good for the Yankees, and again, he can play multiple positions. He can play third base. He can play outfield if need be. So, could the Yankees retain Rosario? I think that would be someone, or someone like that for the bench there. So I think that's where the Yankees would spend funds there. So Bellinger, overall, if you could get him, great. But let's say if the Yankees don't sign him and he wants like 8 years or 7 years like that, he wants to say goodbye. I think you could still have a successful season without Bellinger. And last but not least, let's see what we got here. Do you think the Yankees have become too dependent on Judge carrying the offense? Which Yankee outside of Judge is most likely to take a major step forward offensively next season? That's a very good question. So, short term, yes, the Yankees are probably too dependent on Aaron Judge carrying team. And you go to 2023 when he, ran through the wall at Dodger Stadium there, and he was done for the rest of the season. Obviously, the Yankees floundered after that. At that time, they were kind of maybe fourth place in the AL East. They weren't having a great start, but they were starting to trend high a little bit. But then after that injury, that season was pretty much done, and no one really stepped in to fill the void. And you just go back to this past season when the Yankees had that typical summer slump. It was a lot of time was when Judge was on the IL with the bad elbow. Nobody really stepped up, and again, part of the Yankees' problem. I mean, they had a lot of problems during the summer when they had that kind of that bad funk. But one of them was offense. No one else stepped up really. Even though Stanton was hot for a little while there. Again, so Judge, the Yankees are too reliant on Judge. That's definitely. And in this postseason, there was kind of a different script. Past postseasons, it was Judge that would be the one to struggle, and other people hit. This postseason, Judge was the only one that hit in the postseason, hit about 500, and no one else there to help him out. So yes, but overall, I'd say the Yankees are too dependent on Aaron Judge. You need other guys to contribute. You can't rely on what the Yankees had in 2009 with A-Rod. I mean, A-Rod literally carried the Yankees to that World Championship. So for all the bad stuff and criticism of A-Rod of all the other seasons, which is well deserved, 2009, A-Rod literally carried him, but it's dangerous to rely on one guy like that. You need other guys to step up, and unfortunately, that's the same situation seems like with the Yankees. Seems like they're waiting for Aaron Judge to be the one to do it, and it's just bad. It's unfair to put that pressure on Judge to do it. Now, who do I think is going to have maybe a breakout season for 2026 for the Yankees? I think it's going to be Ben Rice, just because we saw what he had. He had 22 home runs there. Again, he had the high exit velo, and again, he had now a full season under his belt. And I just think he'd be the one maybe take off, where maybe see the power going a little more. Maybe he approaches 30 home runs. So for the Yankees, we have the Yankees who I think have a big breakout season next season for the Yankees. That would be Ben Rice for me, and then be good for him because obviously as a left-handed batter, he would complement Judge. Maybe a good sandwich in between Judge and Stanton. You could have a Rice sandwich. So it was a little interesting game with AI, and of course we have a whole off season ahead of us, so maybe we'll do some more episodes like that. Now, if you want to ask a real question as a human being, the best avenue would be on the YouTube version of the show, so go to YouTube. If you're not a subscriber already, make sure you subscribe. Or if you're not a subscriber, you just want to ask a question, look for the latest video, or of any video, but of course the latest one there. You want to pop in your own questions there. Now, I got to keep it clean, no F-bombs, no F-words there, but I will answer your question, and if you want to give a shout out, I'll give you a shout out, or if you want to be anonymous, we'll keep you anonymous. Nevertheless, you can answer some questions like that. Otherwise, we're going to go to the Terminator. We're going to have the Terminator ask some more questions during the off season there. So, a little homework for you again as we approach the holiday season there. You might get distracted by buying presents and stuff, but good. Make sure you go to YouTube, subscribe to Section 420 Talkin Yankees, and it's the audio podcast version of the show. Wherever you get your favorite podcast, subscribe as well. Get everything. You don't want to miss anything at all. Again, be that intelligent person. And as for the Yankees, we got the winter meetings. I think that the main focus is going to be on Cody Bellinger. If I had to put like a percentage or odds, I say 70% they do retain him there. Is this going to be an amount of the years and stuff like that? I'm sure the Yankees don't want to extend him, 7 years or beyond. They're trying to probably get him 6 or less there. And of course, Boris is probably pushing for 7 years or more there. So they're going to have to find a happy medium. But I think overall the Yankees are going to be able to retain him. Other than that, Cashman is probably going to be down there doing his usual, spotting, trying to bring in some raw talent from other pitching staffs, mainly for the bullpen. I mean, that's what you're looking at. You're looking to find someone like a Fernando Cruz who might have some good talent, but maybe just needs to be fine-tuned. You bring him to the Yankees and have the Yankee pitching staff kind of fine-tune his skills there. So that's, I think, where the Yankees are going to kind of aim their resources. I don't see any big deals other than that, other big money spent. So that's what you're looking at. And if you're the Mets, obviously with Devin Williams, the whole thing's just kind of weird there. But, if you're the Yankees, you're happy to see him there. Maybe he'll grow the beat out a little bit more. Who knows what he's going to do there. But, of course, you want to see him fail.